Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This game is an incredibly quick one and basically just a quick demonstration game to do a little bit of a PSA here for any vampire players going against high elves. Don't bring flyers against high elves. As you can see here, nothing much to say for my build. Prince with Deadly Onslaught, Stand Your Ground, Blade of Belkar Hadris. He's backed by a Frost Heart Phoenix as well as a normal Star Dragon, and then 3 Phoenix Guard and a mounted Mage of High Magic with the Tempest as well as Apotheosis, and of course the Book of Hoeth and Starwood Staff. So basically, very simplistic build. Phoenix Guard, if my opponent brings lots of ground troops, my Phoenix Guard hold while my monsters here try to goon. The Frost Heart Phoenix dies down and provides that -9 melee attack debuff aura, which is very useful against the undead. Undead have pitiful stats by and large in melee, so -9 melee attack on top of that makes them very, very dysfunctional, especially against Phoenix Guard. As you can see here, we are deployed in a bit of a sort of defensive formation in case my opponent brought Winds of Death, which he did do. They are here on the Necromancer, who actually has full kit and no Rod of Corruption, which is a little surprising, but nonetheless, I did want to kind of comment. My opponent here did decide to bring out an interesting composition, a mix of Crypt Ghouls and Graveguard, and not much in the way of AP. Some Black Knights, you can see, some Crypt Horrors here. Necromancer, of course, with that Wind of Death, Vargeists, and of course Manfred with Spirit Leech, Spoil Blight, Van Hels's Dance Macabre, Invocation of Nehek, and Master of the Black Arts. So definitely interesting build, definitely kind of a interesting sort of build. I definitely think there's not enough AP here, but nonetheless, as you can see, my opponent did feel like he could bring some flyers, and you can see immediately we are gap closing it on him very quickly. I pushed my Phoenix Guard up a little bit, though I'm obviously trying to keep him spaced out in case my opponent tries to win me, and we're going to engage pretty quickly here. Now you can see I'm flying my Phoenix straight at those Fargeists. I was initially going to try to avoid fighting. I was initially going to try to kind of, not necessarily avoid, but not fight Manfred right away, but you can see here the Phoenix does get engaged. Now we are actually going to engage on Manfred. And big mistake for my opponent, really don't engage on 2 Star Dragons. One of the big problems, of course, is that vampire counts, while he does have Storm of Flies here providing some melee attack debuff. Actually, never mind. I forgot. The dragon does not have fire resist or fire vulnerability. So I was about to make a bit of an error there, but yeah, the dragon doesn't have fire vulnerability. But nonetheless, it's not really able to duel with Star Dragons, which are much superior. You can see a Tempest here, Overcast going down. That's going to slow him, so he's not able to flee, and he is getting picked apart. Obviously, the Star Dragons have superior stats, despite Curse of Years going down to debuff them. And over here, in the meantime, my Mage of High Magic is fleeing for dear life, as poor Manfred here is getting torn to shreds. Now, he might have some regen in melee. I do believe he does in the classic vampire sense, but it's really not working out. You can see the Vargeists back here getting slaughtered. While over here, my Mage of High Magic actually does get caught by the Black Knight, so I'm going to pull my Phoenix Guard forward. I'm not really worried about these guys. They're a bit of a joke. These Phoenix Guard just brace. I'm going to tank the hit from the Crypt Ghouls. Nothing much there, but we are basically just spending time pursuing Manfred, while over here the Phoenix takes on the Vargeists. Now, my opponent here is still fleeing with Manfred, using Master of the Black Arts to escape. Arts to escape. But he gets caught by another Tempest there, which is going to slow him down further. Phoenix does dive in to provide some of that damage, and now Manfred is stuck in a very bad spot, and you can see we're just going to fast forward through as Manfred gets gooned out. My opponent gives up. My opponent gives up on fleeing, and that's going to be that. My opponent's army, of course, the Vargeists crumbling, some breath attacks, and that's it. Obviously, we are going to have another match right after this, and so I just wanted to demonstrate that unless you feel very confident and you bring, say, multiple Terrorgeists, and when I say multiple, I mean like 2 and a Strigoi Ghoul King with melee attack buffs like Van Hels's Dance Macabre, I would not recommend going air heavy as vampire counts. In fact, I'm not even sure I'd recommend it if you're bringing the Strigoi Ghoul King. I simply don't think it's really worth risking against the High Elves. So just kind of a PSA there, guys. Don't bring air against High Elves. And without further ado, we're going to hop on to main match here, and we'll see how things go there. So here we are on the Mirror Woods, playing as some Brettonia against the Vampire Counts, and definitely some fun stuff here. I think the build I'm using is pretty standard, I would say. A few Peasant Bowmen with Fire Arrows in the back here. You can see Fan Chanters for my Lord, Earthblood, Regrowth, Chalice of Potions, Feather of the Fae, and Arcane Conduit. So usual sort of build. Nothing too fancy. A front line composed of Grail Relique, backing 4 men-at-arms with shields, as well as foot squires. Men-at-arms with shields were perhaps unnecessary. You don't really need shields against vampires, but that does give them more melee defense, which I think is always good to just stick around a little longer. A single peasant mob in the front to soak up 1 charge, and a bit of a sacrificial unit there. And really the main strike force, of course, is the Brettonian cavalry. So Pheasant Bowmen and Fire Arrows can help deal with some of the regenning units, but really out on the flanks, 3 Grail Knights and the Grail Guardians in the center. So obviously I'm hoping to win the flanks against my opponent's heavy cav, and then collapse on my opponent's main line with the rest of the army. Now my opponent here, though, Atticus doing a pretty cool build here with the Gorst. A bit of a meme build, definitely a little bit ridiculous, but definitely let's see how it works out. He's bringing the Liber Noctis, Magic Animus, Awaken from the Grave so he can summon Graveguard, Curse of Years, Invocation of Nehek, and of course Helmut Gorst does have the Reliquary of Corruption, so he can cause AoE damage much in the same way as a Mortis Engine, which could be pretty potent against Brettonian Knights and Infantry. Could definitely chip away and cause some damage over time. For my opponent's front line, definitely dirt cheap here. Some Skeleton Warriors, Königstein Stalkers, the Poor Man's Graveguard, but they do have poison. Some Skeleton Spears on the flanks, and they are being backed by 2 Crypt Horrors, so those guys are definitely providing some AP. In the back, interestingly enough, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, the Tithe, I would have definitely deployed them in the front just to soak up shots, and then the Sternsmen here, kind of in the heart of things, to back up the front line wherever needed. On the flanks, some Dire Wolves, Fell Bats, and Devils or Schwarzhofen to provide some fear and terror and perhaps tear up my backline. More Bats, and then a flanking force of Dire Pack, Dire Wolves, and Blood Knights. So definitely a little bit of a lack of anti-large, but we'll definitely see how things go. Definitely a bit of a meme build here, but potentially a Death Star. I don't have many tools to snipe him. And he does have quite a bit of tools to shut down my backline, even getting past my Grail Knights, so definitely could go badly. Over here you can see on the flank the Grail Knights and Lance Formation actually do catch these puppies, and things are going to be pretty bad for the dogs. They do try to flee, or they actually do succeed in fleeing, but they are getting run down and kind of skewered here by the Knights, and they're immediately disintegrating, so definitely some rough stuff for my opponent. In the meantime, the Fire Arrows do start teeing off on the Crypt Horrors. Obviously, they're not going to do amazingly well, but the Crypt Horrors, because they're very inaccurate, but the Crypt Horrors do actually, you know what? Maybe I'm lying. The Crypt Horrors, thanks to their regen, are susceptible with fire. They have almost no armor, so they're getting shredded pretty quickly by those Fire Arrows. The front lines are, of course, going to clash, in which the Foot Squires will hold pretty well against most of these troops. And see over here, the Grail Knights, the Peasant, and the Enchantress are in there getting that drain effect, and definitely some good stuff. On the flank here, the Grail Knights are going to go dive in to try to save their peasant friends. You can see diving in on the Devils of Schwarzhofen and the Bats. 2 Bats there. My opponent definitely making a slight mistake here. Should have deployed one of the Bats on top of the Peasant Bows, but doesn't do that. In my turn, I make a mistake as well, deploying both Grail Knights against these troops, which allows my opponent to get a full-blooded rear charge with his heavy cavalry and Dire Wolves. So big mistake on both players' sides there. The Grail Knights getting wrapped and actually hammered there. Fortunately, though, this blob of Dire Pack will actually provide a bit of a buffer against the main charge from the Blood Knights, perhaps. You can see over here a cast of the Chalice of Potions is going down. I do believe it actually gets cancelled. You can see heals going down, regrowth, trying to keep these guys intact. The Peasant Bowmen, of course, routing. But in the meantime, we are trying to grind these Bats under. And I do actually have to cast the second Chalice of Potions. The first one got cancelled. I lost the charge, so big problem there. Over here on the flank, a White King actually getting summoned with that overcast of Helmut Gorst's spell. He either summons a White King or a Graveguard unit, so definitely interesting stuff. Sending a White King in there into the backline. While on the flanks, things are definitely getting a little violent. Skeleton Spears here with the Crypt Horrors are able to crush some of these men-at-arms, and we'll probably be able to crush the Foot Squires, but the glorious Knights of Brettonia are not going to allow their peasant friends to be slaughtered. And you can see they dive in against the Crypt Horrors, against the Spears here, and honestly the Spears won't do too great against them, and they'll be able to skewer those Crypt Horrors pretty quick. On the flanks, in the meantime, definitely a bit of a grind here in the pits. The Knights still stuck in Lance Formation, being backed by the Phase, healing. I'm definitely very worried right now that they'll start routing, so I'm doing my very best to just keep these guys' health up. I'd even commit the Grail Guardians in there, just trying to knock out this Devils of Schwarzhofen, open up a corridor here, and keep these Grail Knights from breaking, because if they route, things will deteriorate very quickly, because I just don't have the tools to really protect them, and you can see they've already hit their healing cap there. Over here, Foot Squires tying down these Skeleton Warriors, kind of massacring them as they came back from the edge of the fray. And of course, the Reliquary of Corruption just chipping away at these men-at-arms, causing some constant damage. You can see, even on the Enchantress, you can see there, she's taking quite a bit of tick damage. So has even the Grail Relic has some rough stuff. And of course, the Sternsmen will trash these men-at-arms and peasants and all those troops once they're lacking that knightly support. Fortunately for my opponent, though, the Devils are going to get slaughtered here on the ground. They're not really able to get clear. The Fan Enchantress dives in to provide some support. You can see those green lightning attacks there, blowing them up, and they're definitely in for a rough spot, and you can see the Devils are going to crumble here pretty quickly. Meantime, on the flanks, Men-at-Arms are going to outtrade the Skeleton Spears, so definitely an advantage there. And over here, we are able to use the Foot Squires to kind of tie down the Cryptars, tie down the Spears. The Men-at-Arms are coming back, and the Grail Knights are going to be able to pull out and charge back in later. In the meantime, my opponent's pretty decisively taking the center. It's being held in there by the Grail Relique and the Foot Squires, who are fighting tooth and nail. Definitely some brave Brettonian peasants there. But obviously, they're not able to do very much against the Sternsmen and the summoned Grave Guards, so they're definitely struggling. Over here, though, my opponent's heavy cav force is getting knocked down and slaughtered. My opponent should perhaps try to cycle charge with the Blood Knights, because I was completely unable to cycle charge due to the Dire Pack and the Wolves, but my opponent still had some potential to cycle charge there against my heavy cav. You can see these Grail Knights, of course, have hit their healing cap. There's not much more I can do for them. Fan Enchantress in there, though, providing that Mist of the Lady and debuffing these troops, making them less effective. And over here, the White King actually getting slaughtered in the pits. Interestingly enough, because it's been so long since I played Gorst, I was actually wondering where all these troops were coming from. Like, I didn't notice Graveguard, I didn't notice a White King, but I guess my opponent brought one, and I just wasn't paying enough attention. And it was only in retrospect I realized my opponent had them all along, or had summoned them all along. Over here you can see the Sturmling getting chipped away at by the Fire Arrows. They do have regen, so I'm figuring they're the best target here, better than the Tithe at any rate. Or the degenerating units. There's not much else for them to shoot at. Could, I guess, suppose shoot at Gorst, but if you're willing to bring Gorst for such a memery, I don't think you should get assassinated brutally. So either way, here we are diving on the Graveguard, just trying to buckle my opponent's troops here, as the Blood Knights finally do get mucked down and slaughtered in the pits. Unfortunately, on the flanks here, these Men-at-Arms with shields are broken and rallied. I'm not entirely sure. I guess a bit of a glitch there in the replay. Men-at-Arms with shields here, though, coming back. You can see Foot Squires coming over the hill as we keep chipping away. Unfortunately, though, here, I do believe, of course, I don't believe I actually aimed at him. He does pop the Liber Noctis, but unfortunately, the Fire Arrows at this point will start hitting him because he is surrounded by Graveguard. You can see the Foot Squires there plowing in. Obviously, my infantry corps is very beat up at this point, but my opponent's army obviously is basically gone. It's just a matter of time before these last few troops go down. The Königstein Stalkers low on HP. A few heals are going down, but really it's just a matter of time now with all this cavalry still left on the field. Grail Guardian's almost tip-top shape, and okay HP going to the Grail Knights, who of course have perfect vigor. Obviously, my opponent no longer really stands much of a chance, and he is going to shortly GG out as his surrounded army kind of starts falling apart. So great game to Atticus there. Honestly, it was always awesome to see the Gorst, and definitely quite a tight match. I think a key mistake there was using all of his bats to shut down just one unit of archers. Definitely could have split the forces, and then not really getting multiple cycle charges with the Blood Knights. The Blood Knights were doing some brutal work there, and using those if he'd used those Dire Wolves and Dire Pack to kind of tie me down and prevent my Knights from pulling it through, he could have gotten a lot of cycle charging of the Blood Knights. But otherwise, I do think pretty decent sort of play there. Definitely caught me by surprise with the Gorst, and of course I haven't played against Gorst or with Gorst in such a long time. Perhaps I'll have to give him a shot, but I completely forgot about his abilities, and seeing those Graveguard and that White King appear out of nowhere was definitely a shocker. Wasn't sure what was going on for a bit. So it was only later that I realized what the actual case was. As for the two armies, for the Fan Enchantress, I don't understand what it is with those the bound spells getting interrupted and just blocked. It's happened. It keeps happening. I'm not sure if that's a bug or intended, but it's definitely frustrating. I could have gotten a second Chalice of Potions that game. As far as my troops are concerned, basically everything performed as expected. The peasant bows did get massacred, which is unfortunate, but then again, didn't matter too much. They're a fairly cheap unit. My opponent invested severe resources into tying them down or dealing with them. Cavalry, of course, did great. Foot Squires did great. This lone unit of Men-at-Arms actually performed extraordinarily well as well. I'm not entirely sure how that was. My opponent didn't have zombie summons, so they must have done well against the skeletons, which is definitely pretty impressive. And of course, those courageous peasants got 2 kills on the Königstein Stalkers, so good stuff. For my opponent's build, given he brought Helm and Gorst, definitely. I'm not entirely sure how much I can comment on this. Definitely a bit of a meme build. Where you're trying to go a little more competitive, perhaps I'd drop the Devils and a unit of Direwolves to get a second unit of Blood Knights. The Bats and the Dire Pack and the Direwolves are, I think, enough units to provide support dealing with an enemy heavy cav and tying down the enemy backline. And I definitely am not the biggest fan of the Devils shorts off, and I'm not a big fan of Vargeist in general, I think. But nonetheless, for such a memey build, was definitely entertaining. So good game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you find it entertaining and humorous to see Gorst. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions, or anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.